Okay, well, don't choke on live. Don't choke while we're alive because that'll just that'll just interrupt the whole flow.
We want to welcome you guys. We're actually, Mark, you totally missed the cue. We weren't supposed to do that, folks. We'd like to welcome you all back to the Trampled Underfoot podcast show. It's been a pretty exciting Halloween season. And how have you been doing? Tell us a little bit about what's been going on.
Man, it's been a typical Oregon autumn. I went from running the air conditioner because it was 90 something degrees, and to the next day plugging the heater in because it was 43 degrees. So it's, just your typical Oregon autumn. It's raining and it's the law of the West.
This is our dry season, by the way. It's weird. But it's opposite from you guys because now you're beginning with your
we're beginning our rainy season. Yes, we get most of the rain that we're going to get for the whole year. We get between now and say February. December is usually our wettest month, but it becomes a drizzle that just doesn't really go away. It's not like we get a lot of rain in 24 hours. We don't. It just takes, we get about 18 inches of rain a year, but it takes all stinking year to do it. So
did you ever see that clip of Jeopardy? Alex Trebek?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. We can't go there this early in the broadcast.
Okay. No, I'm sorry. That's the first thing because she was so innocent about it. Well, whatever. I'm not gonna drag us in there. She was so innocent about it. It was Alex Trebek that had that thinking
during the headlights on. Look. Okay, moving on.
Yeah. All right. So no, nothing, dude. It's still hot in Miami. It's not as rainy because we were past that threshold. Although it's prior to a cold front, we get that rain band.
Yeah.
And then the next day, it's like a nice temperature and whatnot. But we're not there quite yet. When you guys up north start freezing your butts off, that's when our possibility of good weather increases. So when you guys are miserable, we get spells of good stuff.
Well, now you're still in hurricane season, right?
I think it's over. I think it's at the end of I should know the exact date, but I think it's by November, either the beginning or the end. We're freaking done. I'm sure of that. I'll tell you right now, actually. With trusty Google.
Oh, wow.
When does hurricane season end in Miami? Should have said Florida, but November 30th. So we still have 29 days.
Yeah, you just hit me in the face with a reality check here. No, it's November. It's frickin' November 1st. What the hell happened to the last 2 years, man?
Do you really want me to answer that question?
I mean, I know it did the last three. Well, 2019 was a fairly decent year. 2020 came along and it was a dumpster fire. Yeah, big time. Yeah. I mean,
yeah, it was a dumpster fire. 2020, the whole thing on just so many levels.
Yeah, everything crashed and burned. I mean, you had the optimism of a new year, you had the optimism of a new decade, and then all of a sudden, somebody pulled the plug. Hey, Bob Lee, what's going on? I haven't seen you in a long time.
The last 2 years or what, and some change is like has put us in a very weird. I think that. It's almost like the timeline divided again, and we're in some weird alternate. We are the Mark Lindsay, the folks out there, and myself, the alternate versions of us. Our normal timeline, we diverted from it, and now we're in this weird. And any break in the timeline, like we could go into zombie. We can go into the zombie reality if the road works again. So let's be careful.
I do the Twilight Zone theme about 5 times a day, just all the time. So that hasn't changed really for me. But oh my God, it's just wow. Yeah, do 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 do, and but there's just a topic right there. That's one of those things that very few people get anymore.
Hmm.
If you start humming the Twilight Zone theme, folks of our generation know what's going on, but young people look at you like, "What the hell does he mean?"
Yeah.
It's just cultural things that just haven't aged well.
Yeah, and it's funny with that. Um, I think that that's one of the breakpoints are the things we associate with situations in the real world, like when we're sarcastic or we're being facetious or in a moment, and we'll bring in one of those little sayings. Those things tie us to anchor us as a
Mhm.
generation or a few generations in the case of us, all of us out here. We're in a certain, but for new kids, like you were saying, you might as well be speaking Martian. The association, but the saving grace is that out of that huge amount of humanity in the new generation, like you've mentioned before, there's kids getting interested in things that are from the past,
Yeah.
in an eclectic way too, where they're picking up information that we would have grown up on,
Yeah.
and they're incorporating it into their entertainment and information gathering, like the people that like watch those reviews of like old bands and stuff,
Hmm. And
stuff
old
like that.
movies and what have you. Yeah, but I
Yeah.
mean, even just little colloquialisms. Like if I said, "Oh my God, Frankie dropped a dime on somebody," you and I know what that means, but nobody born. Well, we have people of legal voting age. Heck, we have people of legal drinking age that have never used a payphone in their life.
But but wait a second. Just to be clear, you said drop a dime.
Hmm.
Um, I know the official saying, but it wasn't it also. You tell me, but um, it wasn't it also giving somebody information. Like let's say
Yes,
you with okay, okay,
yes, you were being tattled
told
on.
on.
Somebody dropped a dime into the phone and called the cops.
Right, right,
Frankie dropped the dime on Louis. Oh,
okay, yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I just
You
wanted
know.
to be sure that we're because maybe I had the saying wrong because the specific thing is the phone, the pay phone, but
Hmm.
the the saying in the context would have been ratting on somebody, let's say. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Ratting on somebody. Now that they would understand. Oh man, he ratted him out. They would get that. But if you said drop a dime, they have no frame of reference because they've never used a payphone in their life, don't know what the heck one is. You know.
Oh, I was at a 7-Eleven doing some purchases. You're gonna like that. Well, I don't know if you're gonna like it or not, but I was at a 7-Eleven, dude, and I walk in and there's this kid behind the
Mhm.
register. I mean, he could be no in his 20s or whatever. Um, and so I get my what I'm getting and stuff, and he says, "Oh, I love this shirt," and it's the Jimi Hendrix shirt that I have.
Mhm.
He says, "I love the album" or something like that,
Mhm.
and it's not a shirt of an album; it's just Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
But you know, and I said, "Oh, um, 50 years," and he says, "You've had that shirt for 50 years?"
Missed it by that much. See, people won't get that reference either.
Yeah,
That was Don Adams as Maxwell Smart from the TV show Get Smart, and that was one of his catchphrases. Missed it by that much, you know.
yeah. So
And that
50
was a
years,
rotten Don Adams impression, by the way.
yeah,
But
um,
it's hard to think that the stuff that we grew up with, that stuff that I grew up with, the pop culture, be it music, movies, TV shows, what have you, are 50 years old.
mhm,
I mean,
or
that's a
more.
hard pill to swallow.
Yeah,
It really is when you look, because you look 50 years, that's 1972.
yeah.
I mean, holy cats. And to me, it seems like the 70s were just a couple of months ago. You know, I mean, God.
Well, for me, the 70s doesn't feel like a couple of months ago because I was born in the 70s.
Yeah.
Neither do the 80s. The 80s are starting to feel, it's funny, right? In
Hmm.
the 90s, I didn't consider the 80s as anything like wow.
Hmm.
In the 2000s, I was like, well, yeah, it is a few years back.
Hmm.
But now sitting here in 2022, I'm like, holy crap. So the
Yeah.
80s and the 90s, for that matter, at this point, in fact, we should feel the same way about the early 2000s because in reality, that's a
Yeah.
lifetime ago.
Yeah.
But I don't consider the early 2000s as a lifetime ago. I consider it as yesterday.
Yeah. We are closer to 2040 than we are into 2000. You know,
Yeah.
it's weird to think of it that way. I mean, holy cats.
It's a really surreal, and I'm sure, obviously, our ancestors would have felt the same way as time progressed and whatnot.
Oh, you know they would have. You know they would
Yeah.
have. I mean,
It's
I
part of the,
I don't know if it is. I don't know if it has anything to do with coming to terms with your own mortality or coming to terms with your own age. But when I sit back, I'm sitting here right now. I don't feel old. I see what my kids and my grandkids are doing. I feel old. But I hear somebody saying, "Oh yeah, Woodstock was over 50 years ago." Now I feel old.
yeah.
Now I feel old.
I mean, um, it's not like the next generation. The problem is the next generation always has to relearn all the lessons.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like
Well.
a certain. So we had to learn the lessons that we've incorporated that our parents and grandparents and so on had to have learned.
Mhm.
And then some new ones and stuff, and then that's forwarded to the next generation. But most of a kid's life growing up is spent on very basic, oh, that's the color red, or that's the this, and
Yeah.
you could live on, oh, that's the color red for a good
Well,
solid chunk of time before you start even delving out into other fields of
well,
thought.
that's been going on forever as well. I mean, every generation thinks they're smarter than the one before it and blames that generation for all their
Hmm.
problems. And
Yeah,
then they grow up and they have kids, and then they see their kids saying the same thing to them. Well, you guys did this.
yeah,
Every generation thinks they're smarter than the previous one. You
yeah,
know, even when the older generation is trying to say, I wouldn't do that if I were you, because I tried it and this happened to me. I didn't listen to my dad either, or I didn't listen to my mom either, and this happened to me. Well, you don't know what you're doing. Zap. Well, hurt like hell, didn't it? That's what
if
happened to me. And that's
if
what
I
happened to
were to,
my dad, you know?
yeah, well, I agree. If I were to have listened to my parents 100%,
Hmm.
my life would have gone smoother up to this point.
Oh, you
I'm
and
just
me
telling
both.
you.
I
I'm just
mean,
telling you right now. Just
but
okay.
but I think that's just inherent in human nature. We we it's not that we think they're lying to us. It's not that we don't believe them. We just think, "Oh no, that isn't how life is." Maybe that's how your life was because you didn't do it right, but that's not how real life is. And then we're in their 40s going, "Dad, remember when you told me that this, and this? You was right, you know?" It
Yeah.
just turns out that, yeah, that is the way life is. So
Yeah.
I think it's just inherent in human nature. I really do.
Yeah, and
But
and you can only learn it, or once you have accepted it, through experience, or magically if you have some innate wisdom as a kid. There's people that learn quicker and whatnot, but
right.
the rejection of everything that came before, which is a theme we touch upon a lot here, um, is a dismissal also of the fact that we do stand on the shoulders of giants, of people that had to do it and left us the trinkets and items and knowledge, waiting in
Yeah.
books and movies and
Well,
films and documentaries and such are waiting there for us to discover. Those things prop us up. So this idea,
but
it's
even their mistakes, because they weren't geniuses. They were figuring out life the same way we are right now. But when they made a mistake, we should try to learn from that mistake and not repeat it. You know,
yeah.
you see the old films, the old silent films of the two trains hitting each other head on,
Hmm.
and the guys pushing the airplane out of the hangar, and it collapses on itself right there on the runway because they've got
Yeah.
15 wings all stacked up. Well,
Hmm.
we should learn from those mistakes. Okay, well, you don't do it that way. The two trains hitting head on, that was actually an event a guy put on as a publicity stunt
Savage.
to just do a spectacular thing, and people were killed in that. I mean, the boilers exploded and train parts went flying into the crowd. They just flew everywhere. It was a major disaster, but it was supposed to have been done as a spectacular publicity stunt. He sold tickets to it, and a number of those people were killed in the process. But it's called tombstone engineering. You learn not to do stuff like that. You know, that's why it's one old movie. Nobody ever was dumb enough to try it again.
Right.
You know, so I mean, there are thrill seekers out there that will try anything. I mean, the wing walkers of yesterday up there playing tennis up on the top wings of a biplane and stuff like that.
Insane.
There are still goofballs that do things similar to that today, but nothing like back in the day
No.
because, people got killed. So it's a little bit different.
Well, we've also replaced a lot of like, I don't know because I only know my area, and I only know my
Mhm,
area in at least to the extent of which I interact with people, which is
mhm,
probably um, very minimal.
mhm.
But we're in a technology, obviously, time, and things like, there's a bunch of things, but I saw a new update to the virtual reality world,
Yeah.
where you have your lenses or whatnot, the goggles or whatnot.
Mhm.
Now they have these platforms. I don't know if you've seen them,
Yeah,
but
I've
like,
seen about them, but I haven't experienced them or anything.
so it's a circular base
Mhm.
with like a rig that straps you in, but your feet are free to move. And then there's I guess like some a sliding on pulleys mechanism that's tied to your upper body so that you can crouch down and grab stuff. So there's and then you put your goggles on. Well, the platform on the bottom, you wear these sneakers
Mhm.
and you oil the base. It's like a walk,
Mhm.
no pun intended. You can um and you slide in place, and it simulates running in this virtual world,
Mhm.
and you can walk back. And so the guy was doing a test on it. He was saying, for people that have never done this, um it's going to feel very awkward because you're not necessarily, your real foot movement is not necessarily in line with the speed of the actual game that you're in, environment you're in, because
Mhm.
sometimes the game environment only has a walking speed, but
Yeah.
you can so he says it's awkward, but humans are great at adapting. So after a few said hours of using the contraption, you get the gist of it,
Yeah.
and it really immerses you. So there's people sitting in a room, hooked up to these things, traveling miles in universes that are all completely digital.
Wow.
It's it's
Wow.
it's
Now,
crazy.
that would see now this is where my mind goes. I would expect to see something like that once it was developed to be in like an amusement park where you could go drop $5 and go experience that for 10 minutes,
That would be so cool, dude.
you know. And then as the technology got cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, eventually people would bring them into their homes
Yeah.
because it's kind of like the arcade went away when video games got so popular when the computer and the game systems got cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. The arcades just more or less closed down because
Yeah.
you didn't have to go down there and drop quarters into a machine. You could sit in the house and play yourself.
And yeah, your time of having fun
Hmm.
playing the actual game increased, but we lost a social, because that's where people would get together.
Hmm.
You know, your friends would get
Well,
together. You'd see girls. Girls would be there. It would be a nice little place to interact, and
hmm.
other friends and other groups. And but you didn't play as much because you
but
didn't have as many quarters.
but they also just switched that over to the online world because they're still playing multiplayer games.
Yeah,
They're just now that they're doing like what we're doing right now. They're sitting there with headsets and they're all
yeah,
playing the same game on teams or individually or what have you.
yeah,
So now you don't have that personal interaction like you're talking about where you're standing there watching your friend because you're out of quarters and a couple people walk by and you strike up a conversation with them. That's not happening. But they've changed that dynamic from being downtown seeing people face to face to being online and talking like we're doing right now.
yeah.
So
I remember other interactive real world scenario like clubs.
oh yeah,
There were a lot of clubs here in Miami. There probably still are. I just don't. Well, there's got to be.
yeah,
Um,
there
and I
are.
remember, I remember going to clubs, dragged to clubs with my friends.
Hmm.
It's better to go in groups and stuff, and like support, and you're hunting for girls and stuff. And actually, if one were to say hunting for girls back in the '80s, everybody knew what you meant. But today, it might mean
Yeah, they might take you literally.
today that would probably mean a literal.
Right.
But you so so everything's all screwed up. But so we go, to meet girls. I guess that's
Yeah,
and,
there
and,
you go.
and I remember in one scenario we were at a club and it was all that crap music that I don't like, but we were there for the girls regardless. Uh, and me and a girl sat down, and the music was so freaking loud, and we're trying to talk to each other. And I remember her going, "What?" and me and her responding, and me going, "What?" and, and he
Yeah,
said, and it was like, um,
but neither one of you wanted to leave.
right, stuff like that.
Yeah.
If I knew then what I know now, a lot of things would have been crazy,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
crazy. But
But what can you do? So you want to, if you want, we can put the link out there in the chat, and if anybody wants to join us here, we don't really have a topic tonight. I mean, we did our Halloween show last week, so if you
yeah,
want, I'll do that. You
yeah,
want okay?
sure.
So I'll post the link right now in the chat, and if you'd like to join us here on camera and BS a little bit and get in on the conversation, just click that link, and you're welcome to join in. And we just give it a good go and see what happens. But the social interaction aspect of it was a whole heck of a lot easier back then
Hmm.
because it's very easy, even in a video game or something like that, it's very easy to remain anonymous.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to speak to anybody, don't want to interact with somebody, that's real easy to do.
Hmm.
But when you are at a bowling alley playing a pinball machine and somebody talks to you, you can't remain anonymous when you're out in public.
That's right.
You can choose to, yeah, I'm kind of concentrating, or I'm waiting on a friend, or I'm, waiting on my girlfriend, or what have you. You can kind of discourage the conversation, but you can't back out of existence.
That's true.
Let's see who popped in to, hey, welcome to You Bet Your Life. Say the secret
How
word
you
and
doing?
Eloy will wash
Hey,
your car. It's a common word,
Yeah.
something you always have with you.
I would
Just
watch your
you can't hear the fan, can you?
Uh,
no.
nope, can't hear it at all.
All
I
right.
would wash your car in my soggy old shoes when I should be sitting in
See,
a swivel chair.
that's another reference that nobody gets. That's from the old Groucho Marx
Oh,
show called You Bet Your Life. And we have Mr. Greg.
Hey,
Let's
Greg.
let's introduce folks. We have Greg the Snow Crusher, and we have JP from JP's Woodwork on YouTube. You're on the Instagrams. You're on you're anywhere
Facebook,
else?
Facebook, Saturday
Facebook.
morning cartoons.
Yeah. Yep.
That's
Yep. Yep.
that's about it.
And Greg, you are right
I'm
there.
right here.
Okay. Now, Greg's on YouTube as well as the Snow
Yeah,
Crusher.
I'm on YouTube as the Snow Crusher.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, we were kind of doing as the holidays pick up. I don't know about Eloy. I can't speak for him, but as the holidays get closer, I start getting more and more nostalgic about the way things used to be when I was a kid. So that's kind of where we are now. But I kind of got stuck on this whole thing of making references that nobody gets anymore. And as you came on, Jamie, I did one
Mm.
from the old Groucho Marx game show called You Bet Your Life.
Right.
And so I say secret word, say the secret word, and Eloy will come wash your car. It's a common word, something you always have with you. That's a reference back to that game show. When he had contestants come on to talk to him, the announcer would say something like that. If you say the secret word, a duck would drop down from the ceiling with that word, and you would win like $100 extra or what have you. So when people say the secret word and this will happen, that's the reference from that old game show. But we're talking in the
Gotcha.
50s.
Can you guys finish this sentence?
No.
Doot doodaloot doot.
Doot doot.
Mhm. I think that's ingrained in our DNA.
I think so. Yeah.
So
I think
anybody
so.
years from now, no matter the connections, they will know how to answer that.
I think so.
And
Yeah.
that's a weird one too, because that was from a shaving cream commercial in like the 30s.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, shaving a haircut,
Shaving haircut 2 bits.
2 bits.
Oh, wow.
There's another one of them. I don't know. I don't know if they made it to America. It's like ooh ee ooh ah ting tang.
Walla walla bing bang. Yeah,
There you go.
made it to
We
America. That came from America. That was
Oh, did it?
the
Is it Witch Doctor?
Witch Doctor,
Yep.
That's
and
right.
it was done by a guy by the name of Ross Bagdasarian.
Right.
His stage name was David Seville.
Ah.
He did Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Oh, okay.
That was
Did not
that was
know that.
him. Yep.
Okay, one question for you guys. See if you have the answer. It's a Halloween, although we're past it Halloween by 1 day. But can you tell me the name of the name of the person in the song Monster Mash that actually was telling the story within the song? What was his name?
Igor.
It was either Igor or Boris. I think it was Igor. Yeah. I don't have the answer, by the way, but
it was Boris. When you get to my door, tell them Boris sent you. He was doing
what?
Boris Karloff's voice.
Okay.
That's another reference
That's right. Okay.
gone.
Greg, I cannot believe. Well, actually, Greg, I can see because you're not you're not a monster. You're not a monster fan. Okay, I can see why you would.
Well, I remember that song, and it's
It
been
was
a
a
while.
monster mash. He was
That's
doing
so
a
true.
fake Boris Karloff accent.
Yep.
That's so
Just-
true, and I didn't make the connection. Anyways,
Just quickly going back a day to Halloween again.
Mhm.
I can't believe how different the US and the UK treat Halloween.
Mhm.
okay.
So the US is all big on the trick or treat and the decorations and all this kind of stuff. And
The costumes.
the UK is, if we get a trick or treater at the door, it's like, you left the lights on. Go wait, hide. Wait until they go away. It's like it's not really a big deal over here.
I'll be honest with you. Up until about 5 years ago, I didn't think the UK celebrated anything on Halloween.
We have firework night or have fireworks around that sort of time. get a few kids
Mhm.
doing it. We used to have a thing when I was a kid. It was like a penny for the guy, like Guy Fawkes and all that kind of
Mhm.
stuff.
Yeah.
We used to have that kind of stuff and bonfire nights, but it's kind of faded away a little bit, I guess.
Well, you have over there, you have a different history than we have. So I'm sure
Yeah,
there are completely different traditions as well.
yeah. It's changed to violence and vandalism now.
Yeah, well, in some places, so was Halloween.
Yep.
Halloween, when I was a kid, was for going out and trick or treating and getting candy and dressing up in the
Mm,
costume. It was more about the dressing up in the costume and getting candy than
yeah.
anything else. But adults started more or less, I won't say taking over Halloween, but adults started getting more involved in Halloween probably in
Mm,
the mid to late 70s and have turned it into what it is now. Because I don't remember adults dressing up in costume at all
mm,
when I was a kid.
I do. They would have Halloween parties, and I remember
Mhm.
my parents dressing up and going out to
Really?
a party. Yeah, and this was back, well, in the early '60s.
Hmm.
I remember my dad was dressed up as Robin Hood, and what? You know,
Yeah.
holy, I couldn't believe it.
Well, my parents never did it. I mean, mom took my brother and I out trick or treating, and dad stayed home and gave out candy. But I don't remember any adults out walking their kids around
No,
dressed up or
like I said, my parents dressed up. It was to go to a private party. It wasn't to
right.
go out on the town and that kind of
Mhm.
stuff.
Let
But I
me
mean,
in-
I'm
let me
seeing.
interject.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I wanted to interject a side note. When you're done with this
Left or right?
particular, um, you're saying your dad dressed up as Robin Hood.
Hmm.
Um, but my question is, because that's what popped into my head. All of you guys, um, what did your dads and moms, for that matter, but what did your dads normally? What was their attire throughout your growing up, if you can remember?
What, as in fancy dress or just normal everyday clothing?
What every day they would wear?
My dad would normally wear, I think, what you would call like what we call tracksuit bottoms. So what you call like slacks, I
Sweatpants.
guess, sweatpants.
Hmm.
When he wasn't working, so on his days off, it'd be like sweatpants and a sports t-shirt of some sort.
Okay.
That was normally his everyday dress. My mum was kind of varied over the years. She's kind of her hair's gone from being out here to straight and different lengths, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's kind of varied from cardigans to sweaters to t-shirts to.
Yeah. My dad wore t-shirts and blue jeans to work,
Mm,
but he wore nicer blue jeans and occasionally slacks if they were going out.
Mm.
And if they were going out, a nice button-up shirt, a really nice button-up shirt or pullover if they were, and slacks if they were going to town or going somewhere, going out to dinner or what have you.
Well, my dad, I remember him when he was working as a mechanic. He just wore a shirt, a button-up shirt, and they weren't jeans, but they were kind of like a uniform pants, or they weren't for a uniform, but you know what I'm saying, like they were
Yeah.
a heavy duty pair of slacks or
Like
pants.
Dockers.
I guess so, yeah. If you want to, I don't know exactly what Dockers would be, but anyway, yeah, they were. And then he would wear jeans. I remember when he started wearing jeans. It was kind of at the end of that, and then he became a teacher, an instructor, and he wore like a suit jacket and
Mhm.
tie and shirt and pants, like
Yeah.
suit
Yeah.
pants.
Business suit. Yeah.
Yeah,
My old
but
man wore exclusively, occasionally a regular like t-shirt, short sleeve but the general every day for years and years was a button-up shirt with short sleeves, It could be the stripes. It could be just a solid color. It had its pockets, and he'd always have his cigarettes in the pocket. And for pants, it was always like just slacks, everyday use slacks.
Yeah.
On occasion, he'd wear jeans when it was something to do with like working around the house or whatnot. But it was usually what I would consider the old school, what guys would generally, the average sort of like slacks and that shirt with buttons.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know. And my mom, due to, well, me starting to have a memory from the time I was born, in the 70s, I don't know if before, I guess it was before too, but women used a lot of like pants and whatnot, but it would be like
Slacks.
dress pants or whatnot.
Yeah.
So I remember a lot of like jumpsuits as well, into the 80s. So there was a lot of 80s.
Yeah. Now,
I remember a lot of that.
now Jamie would call those a boiler suit.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't ever recall my mum ever wearing a dress unless we was going out somewhere like a wedding or something like
Yeah.
that.
That was the same with my
Ever.
mother. That
And
was
My
my dad
mother-
never, ever, ever wore jeans. Ever. He hated them. Still hates them.
My mother would wear a thing when she was, just around the house or whatever. She called it a moo.
Yeah.
And it was, a kind of a whatever you want to call.
In some places they call it a house dress,
Yes. Yeah.
as big as a.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It was basically had two straps and sleeves
Mm-hmm.
down to about here, and
Yeah.
they just sewed on the edges of the bolt of cloth.
Yep.
It wasn't form fitting for anything.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
Two other questions in this theme. One, did you ever see your parents wear shorts? And two, what did your grandparents wear? If you remember that.
My grandmother wore just a regular dress, just a light dress. People might call it a summer dress or whatever for the most part, but it was all year round basically. That's what she wore. My one grandfather died when I was 2, so I don't remember what he wore, and the other one died, and I didn't see him a lot, and he wore maybe a bit of if he was on a farm, so it would be just whatever work
Shay-
trousers.
Shay threw up here. Oh my gosh, my kids are going to remember what I wear in detail. In detail.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You are making an impression whether you know it or not.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
God, Mom used to wear this Bob Marley t-shirt. You couldn't get her
Yeah.
out of that ding dong thing. She always had that. I think she had 4 or 5 of them,
Some of the most random things that people do, and I know this just because I was a kid, but looking back, I remember some of the most like ridiculously random things that probably people that I was observing would not even have considered were anything of noteworthy, remain in the mind. So it's an interesting point to bring up. Actually,
Did you ever see your mother wear high heels?
occasionally, yeah.
How about you, Greg or Jamie?
Yep.
No.
They weren't that high. They weren't the old stiletto type by no
Yeah,
means,
they
but
weren't walking on tiptoe or nothing.
no. It was,
Yeah.
maybe 3 inches maximum on the, the fanciest
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah. My grandmother was stereotypical of the house dress. She had like 15 different colors of house dress. And they were always nice and neat and tidy. And if she was in the kitchen, then she had the apron.
Mhm.
But she was born in 1920, so she was of the age, but Grandpa, when it depended on what he was doing. He was a carpenter. If he was working carpentry or doing any kind of plumbing, he had a pair of blue denim bib overalls, or you would call them dungarees, Jamie, that he wore. If he was painting, he had a pair of bib overalls or dungarees that were blue and white pinstripe. And they kind of sort of hid whatever color he was painting at the time. I mean, there was obviously there's no such thing as blue and white pinstripe paint, but it didn't stand out so much if he had got white paint on it or something like that. It didn't stand out as much as if it was on blue denim. But
No.
that was basically all he ever wore.
Yeah.
So
my grandparents on my dad's side, my granddad wore like suit trousers, usually a blue shirt, and then I don't know what you call it, but it'd be like a knitted top that had no sleeves.
okay, almost like a waistcoat.
Yeah, kind of, but it was like a sweater,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
Sweater vest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
kind of one of them.
That-
And my nan just used to wear she just always dresses.
Yeah.
My mum's parents, my nanny's still alive. She's always in dresses and knitted stuff. And
Mhm.
my mum's dad, he was always suits. Never saw him out of a suit.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Did any of you guys ever wear corduroy trousers? Corduroy pants?
Oh yeah.
I did.
And if
May
you
I
walk
done?
too fast, you'd almost set your legs on fire.
Yeah, you could. Yeah. And if you were wearing corduroy pants and flip flops, you were a one man band.
Yep.
Boop boop flap flap boop boop flap.
Um,
Your own rhythm section.
And you remember the what they called the whale, which was the width of the pile, or whatever you want to call it, of the corduroy. You
Uh-huh.
had narrow whale and wide whale was big, for a couple of years. It just went the fashion cycle.
Yeah, we called them cords. We didn't call them
Yeah.
corduroys. We called them cords, and the real wide rib we called them jumbo cords.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You're old when you remember bell bottom corduroys.
Yeah.
Just to add my, because it's interesting what you guys are saying, how your the suit was interesting. I remember my grandfather wearing plaid pants. With a button
that
up
was an era. That was an era.
Yeah, so he always had. I mean, he had other, but like I remember a lot of the plaid pants, kind of like when people go golfing or something. At least that's the connection I make in my head. And I didn't see. I mean, other older men of the time wore, and I guess you could think of Miami Beach. If you look at those old things, you'll see the guys with the hats sitting, in chairs playing dominoes. They would have that kind of. So he was kind of. I mean, I focused on him more because he's my grandfather, but looking back, that would have been something that they did. So yeah, plaid pants.
I just did some converting of old Super 8mm films to digital, and so anyway, I'm going through these things and I'm showing them to. I don't know if it was my wife or what, but anyway, she saw it, and here I am, and I'm wearing these pants, and it's Christmas morning, and you come down the stairs. It was at my grandparents' house, grandmother's house. Anyway, and she says, "Oh, those are wild-looking pajamas." I says, "Pajamas? That's my pants."
Yeah,
and they were these striped pants with different colors, like red, yellow, blue, white, and we called them awning pants.
Pants.
They look like the awnings in front of storefronts.
Yeah, and it was basically a white background, but it had blue, red, yellow, green, whatever stripes down it. You look like a walking circus tent.
Yeah, exactly.
Was that the 90s?
No. That was 1969 or 70.
Because that came back with a thunderous return with
and
MC
the more
Hammer.
outlandish they were, outrageous they were, that's the better they were. You know what I mean? Like small pinstripes. Nah, that's nothing. They got to be 3/4 of an inch wide.
Yep.
And very clashing colors. Like
I only saw men wear them for a very short time, but that became real popular for women.
Yeah.
And because I grew up in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area in the 60s. And from about, oh man, I'm thinking way back here, from about 67 to the early 70s, women wore those all over the place. You always saw women wearing awning pants. And yeah, they're throwing back here between Steve, Linda, and Shay, um, talking about hip huggers. I remember oh boy, do I remember hip huggers as a 10, 11, 12-year old boy. Hip
Mm-hmm.
huggers and peasant blouses are the two that will stand
Mm-hmm.
out in my mind forever. Oh, and the mini skirt as well.
I've just sent you and Eloy a picture of the clothes I was dressed in when I was younger.
Uh-oh. Do we dare share it? We're not out to embarrass Jamie.
I don't mind.
You don't
Everyone
mind?
else saw it in the 80s.
Yeah, you were walking
Everyone else
around
was in
in
that
public.
stuff in the 80s.
You were
I still
blonde.
claim my parents hated me in the 80s.
When did your hair start? When did your hair start? My little cousins.
So there's a funny story about my hair. My hair used to be longer than my past my shoulders when I was younger. My
Mhm.
dad hated it, but my mum really liked it. And without my mum's permission, my dad went and got me a crop
Oh
on me
no.
haircut.
Oh no.
Needless to say, he wasn't flavour of the day.
That's one way of putting it. Okay, well, if you don't mind, I will go ahead and I will share
No,
that.
I don't mind.
Just one picture,
I don't mind.
and that's what we're talking about. Now, um, a cable knit sweater like that, I mean, I don't
They
have
were
the buttons. I have pullovers. I have a cable knit sweater like that. Linda made for me.
My mum still makes them.
Yeah.
They're worth quite a lot of money as well.
Yeah, I know. She made it for me. She doesn't like it. I love the thing, but yeah, I don't see any. Now, I will say something about the colors. You've got looks like
I
blue
know.
gingham,
I know.
excuse me, red gingham with blue shorts and
I've
the
heard
Red,
that.
red, white, and blue, mate. Representing.
I've heard that.
yeah.
I've heard that pink in the UK is considered a masculine color, whereas
A
here
lot of men wear it. I was waiting for Shady to go, oh.
in
It didn't
in
happen.
in the 80s, because in America pink is exclusive. Well, I don't want to say traditionally it's exclusively female. And
It
by the
is.
way,
It traditionally it is over here as well, but it seems to be a lot more men seems to be wearing it now.
and by the way, this dangerous topic of color assignments is nowadays is. But I'm gonna go there at the risk of danger. Um,
Go ahead.
well, go ahead, Mark. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just go. No, I want you to go ahead and finish
Oh,
because you.
what
Okay.
I will say on the subject, I watched a program about a prison once, and there was this particular prison actually made prisoners, like extremely violent prisoners, wear pink
That's
because
in Arizona.
it made them think that it would demasculinize them.
Yeah, that's in
If it's
Arizona. I think it's Joe
yeah,
Arpaio. It's Joe
they
Arpaio.
painted the inside of prisons pink too, to
But
calm.
let me say that back in the day in the 80s, you remember that there were your Sears and your and here we had a place called Bird Eyes and your JC Penney's and whatnot. And I remember they were getting bold, and the tradition is men blue and whatnot. So, and I remember starting to see in the men's, area, pink shirts and whatnot, and I was like, boy, that's fill in the blank, in your '80s brain. And I remember for one Christmas, I opened up a box. We were sitting there and stuff, and it was a pink button up, and I looked at it. You have to understand the context. I'm looking at it. I'm like, there's no freaking way. And my mom, oh, that's beautiful. And oh, it's incredible. And I'm looking at this pink shirt. Yes, it may sound shallow nowadays in 2022, but for a boy in the 1980s, looking at a pink shirt and everybody's saying, oh, that's awesome. And all I'm thinking to myself is,
yeah.
this is
back
in the
in the
black.
80s, it would have been like opening up a Polly Pocket or something like that.
Exactly.
It's like giving you a strawberry short. It's like giving a boy back in the day a strawberry shortcake doll. It's like, oh, isn't that wonderful? I want to destroy it right now. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Well, back though, like I say, when I was talking about these awning pants, and just before that, it was, you know, it was the hippie movement or whatever you want to call it, the psychedelics and all that kind of stuff, and the more outrageous the clothing or the colors not were, the better it
Yep.
seemed. Like I had a hot pink. Now that's a very vibrant pink, polka dotted black shirt with a hot pink collar and cuffs. Now that was, it was, very in your face. And then the paisley was another one,
Yes.
and there was, many things like that. That was for men to wear, and that
Yep.
was seen as no problem. With
Mhm.
one of these silly looking medallion chains with the around your neck.
Now, paisley, blue, black, or purple? Did you wear
It was blue, I guess.
blue? Okay, all right. Because I saw all three, and I myself wore blue as well.
Yeah.
About the pink thing, you're both wrong. Pink was for boys, and blue was for girls up until the end of World War II.
Mm.
Pink is its root is in red, and pastel colors we use for babies. But blue was the color of the Virgin Mary, so light blue, pale blue was for girls.
That's interesting.
And red is a strong masculine color, so pink was for boys. But after the end of World War II, when things started getting better for everybody involved, the fashion industry started marketing bright pink to women.
Okay.
And that's when it changed.
That's a very interesting.
On a quick side note, look at all of the colours of our name tags.
Yeah. Bright red.
I will say though, it is interesting, and obviously, what I said. That's what you would have experienced. Look, a boy growing up in my era. I mean, you guys can
Yes.
can admit it or not, but when you saw pink, you're like,
Oh yeah,
oh,
me
that's not
too.
right.
Me too.
so
But what I'm getting at is that was from like your grandma, right? She was in that era of pink for boys.
But you're talking more a pastel pink or a light pink, or a bright pink. The cars in
Like a hot pink.
1970, there was the Panther pink color by Chrysler put out on their cars, their muscle cars.
And guys
Cadillac.
and guys drove pink Cadillacs.
I wouldn't. That's true. You're right. I wouldn't. That is a very good point. I wouldn't be able to tell you in terms of my family pictures from the 20s, 30s, 40s, or whatnot, because they're all black and white.
Right.
It would be enlightening to see. This was worldwide.
Yeah.
That's
it
an
was
interesting
all
thing.
over Europe.
So I've actually this is one of those things that I
And
think you've
America.
mentioned in the past, and I forgot that I heard it, and it just went the wayside. So I've reheard it. I believe that's true, but it is interesting because it does speak to what a lot of people say, where things like playing with see. I hate to say because it goes against everything that in me creates anger and wanting to destroy. Things like playing with certain, like a doll or stuff. There's no real, other than we grow up maybe seeing the commercials and all the. But I don't know, man. I was drawn to. I saw. Anytime I'd see like strawberry shortcake, I know I brought it up a couple of times, or this. I like the Smurfs, right? But I saw the Smurfs as halfway here, halfway there. But
they were all guys and one girl.
Yeah, no, but the cutesiness.
Uh-huh.
I went towards, as opposed to the cutesiness, like ooh cutesy. Instead of that, I don't know why I gravitated towards like the GI Joes, the explosions and stuff. I don't know that's. I think that's innate. But the colors, if you were to switch around because of what you said, all the
So
GI Joes.
dressing your GI Joe in pink would be.
Right, right.
I think it's because Eloy's just an angry person.
Yeah, maybe it's due to the angry. But you know,
Well,
all the boys in the block,
mhm.
were playing with GI Joes too. Nobody
Yeah.
was like I never saw any of my friends busting out with a Cabbage Patch doll and saying, "Hey guys, let's go to war with the Cabbage Patch." No, never. So I think there's some things that just this is
Well,
a
yeah.
weird.
I mean, we played with GI Joes. Now you had the smaller GI Joe figures.
Yes.
We had them. They were the 10-inch tall, the same height as a Barbie doll. GI Joe was.
And by the way,
Came
there's
with a
nothing.
came with a big Jeep and all this other stuff. But we would play with the GI Joes and the Jeeps and the tanks and this is a helicopter over here and all that other kind of stuff. We weren't playing with dolls. No, the girls in the other room, they had Barbie with her Corvette.
Yeah.
It was pink, by the way. They were playing with dolls, but we weren't. We were
I don't.
playing with GI Joes.
On that note, I don't care because Greg has not chimed in one bit. But I don't care what Greg says. I can't picture him back in the day saying, "Oh, the tea set, the China set. Let's play with that instead of like with guns or whatnot." I
The
don't see it.
GI Joe didn't come in till I don't know, 12 or something like that, 11.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember. And that was not so much. I was finished playing Army,
Yeah.
and you play with your Army men, the little wee figurines,
The little
and
green ones, yeah.
yeah, the
Yeah.
tanks, and setting all that up and putting firecrackers onto them and blowing them up.
Yeah.
And that was your
Shoot them with BB guns.
yeah, your train sets. You'd play with that, and you'd
Mhm.
incorporate
Yeah.
that in, and road race cars, and whatever
Yes.
that. So GI Joe was really not. I didn't have anything to do with them really.
There
No,
was
but
there
you
was a
weren't.
short stretch in there of about 5 years probably where I was interested in that kind of thing. And then it is, as you say, as you grow up, we started out with the Green Army men and just setting them up and advancing them inch by inch and
Mhm.
moved up to setting up big dioramas and throwing rocks at them. And then we graduated to BB guns and things like that. Then just sniped at them from, try to
Yeah.
get the furthest distance away and what have you.
And then there was model cars, and
Mhm.
then model planes. I never got into the model boats, but
Me either.
yeah.
Me either.
In the 70s, I know it was earlier than that, obviously, but like the woman's what's the word for it? Woman feminist movement,
Women's liberation.
the women's liberation, right?
That
Well,
was the 60s.
Yeah.
60s and 70s. I mean,
Oh yeah, it went into the 70s.
so I grew up, with the women around me, and maybe not the older women, but the women in my family, with a certain sort. There was none of this stuff that you would see back from the moonlighting, moon. What do you call that? Boy, I can't. Just black and white era shows where everything was delineated, and there was delineation, but there was an equality that was part of the thing. So you never thought of, like, how a lot of people argue points nowadays that are, I think that there have been resolved for a long time ago to a great degree. I saw men and women in terms of value and this and that. Maybe because I was born and grew up, from the 70s into the 80s and so on. I didn't have any of that concept, but I did have the concept of this is for guys and that's for girls. So it was a mismatch but nowadays there's this sort of like blurry thing. And I just find it hilarious.
Some of it is.
So you didn't associate with the Honeymooners show with Jackie
Yeah.
Gleason and so back in, that was very whatever of the era.
Yeah.
And then they moved on to they got into better whatever. I guess Mary Tyler Moore's show kind of was one of them that changed, that
Mhm.
it wasn't this one type of scenario. It was
Well, there were a few shows before that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that became super, super popular. But yeah, it was. But we also understood, because I can remember my mom telling me that that's how it was back then. The men went to work during the day and the women stayed home and took care of the house. They did other things, but they generally stayed home and took care of the house. And that's the way it was back then. Now,
Yeah.
my mom worked, and so that's why I thought, Mom, why don't you stay home and take care of the house? Well, various reasons, this, that, and the other, but that's the way it used to be. It's not really that way anymore. You can stay home and do that, but I like to work, and I'm going to go to my job and do this. And
Yeah.
okay. So I didn't see anything weird about either situation.
Exactly. I agree. Because I had friends and stuff. There were different scenarios where that would apply differently. We had no kids back then. I don't know all kids back then, but there seems to be some sort of trend that I can connect. But it's just my experience that none of these things were issues, you know.
Well,
None of them.
I think they still aren't unless you choose to make it one. But, because it doesn't matter what you do. If you want to stay home and take care of a house, male or female, if you want to go to work, fine. Just be the best you can be, and to hell with everybody else.
Let me attach this point. It is true that in the movies, and in particular in the rock bands, you saw a lot of like the guys just exaggerated roles and stuff, in terms of those things. So you could, but it's kind of like, even back then there was this thing: if somebody tells you to jump off a bridge, would you do it? Remember that old saying? I remember that from back in the day, and it's like, of course not. Only the most insane people would reenact to a T behaviors that are outside the common sense norm.
I was that kid. I was that kid. If your friend told you to jump off the bridge, would you do it? Mom, I've already done it 4 times. You didn't have to tell me.
There's no such word as can't.
Yeah, really. There's just can't yet.
Cannot then.
We have a friend that used to, tell, you can't jump off that roof into the pool. Oh, yes, I can.
Yeah, that was me.
Yep.
Yeah,
my brother and me up on the roof of the house. My brother, hey, here's an umbrella. Try it. It'll work. I'm like, who needs the umbrella? Jump. I didn't care.
One of the reasons why I stopped drinking.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, I was
crazy.
10. I wasn't drinking either. So, but there was one area here on the Rogue River. They've since taken out the dam, so that area is not there anymore. Where there was a bridge across the river, and it was quite high up. Now that I think back on it, they had built a power dam. Years ago, back in the early 1906, 1907, something like that. They built this power generation dam. And so the river was backed up, and it was a large, very deep area. And we'd jump off of that sucker into the water. Just jump off the bridge and just go for it. Yeah. Not head first. We weren't that stupid. We wouldn't go head first because you were never 100% sure what was below the surface. Right? So figured and this is a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old's logic. If I break my legs, that's fine. If I break my head open or break my neck, I'm going to have to go home. That was,
yeah,
that was my logic back then. But yeah, we'd jump into it. Now, no way.
Well,
no way, not a chance.
We used to have, there was a lot of scenarios like that where now it's not necessary. So on the beach in Miami Beach, we'd all drive out in one car. We'd all pack into one car and with friends, and we'd all drive out.
Yeah.
And there's a pier on South Beach. And we jumped from, it was freaking high. And the water was deep enough, but there were rocks all around.
Yeah.
And,
same here.
And we'd all freaking jump in there. And nowadays, all of that is kept an eye on. There's none of that. There's none of that skating up to the edge of danger to peer over into the chasm of death. There's none of that that I see. But then again, I'm not a kid running
Well,
around seeing what kids do. But
there's signs
Yeah.
all over that bridge: no fishing or swimming from bridge. There's a big chain link, 6-foot chain link fence up there to keep people from doing it.
yeah,
It's just we have, my wife and I were having this discussion earlier. We have got to get the word safety out of our vocabulary to the point to where it's every third word. Oh, that's dangerous. Oh, that's not safe. Oh, really? Look, the world wasn't conquered by Attila the Bland, or
Attila the
Alexander the
Soft,
Alexander the Average, or Ivan the Ho Hum, or something like that.
Alexander the Careful,
Yeah.
Alexander.
I mean, gosh,
Yeah, there was none of that. It was all freaking, pumped up with
we
what you call energy and
well,
massacring.
no, we expected people to be smarter than the average bear. I mean, and I didn't mean to use that word because I'm fixing to talk about something called Bear Creek. Bear Creek runs right through the middle of town.
By the way,
Being
you're
Is
you're
that
being very
BEAR or BARE?
BEAR.
Okay.
Bear Creek, it runs right through the middle of town. It has for hundreds of years. It was there before there was a town. The town was built around it. All of a sudden, 20 years ago, they put big railings right next to it. Don't go near the water. Don't go into the water. It's like, do you really have to be told that?
Yeah.
I
You
was
know?
gonna
Nowadays, yeah.
I was gonna say a joke, but Greg's was so perfectly in tune with the scenario that it was like it was like just a little extra touch. Ding! It was perfect, dude.
I
Bear
mean,
Creek.
God, it's like, but that was when we were taught by our parents. We were taught common sense. Are
Yeah.
your feet wet? No. Well, then you're walking on the right part. You know,
Yeah,
you didn't
common
have
sense
to
is
be
just
told.
not there now, it seems.
Yeah. Well, it's not so common. We don't
And
teach our
and the
kids.
thing
Is the
is,
problem.
like, um, when you grew up in my day and age, you found your limits and your boundaries because
Hmm.
if it hurt, oh, maybe I'll not do that anymore. If it
Yeah.
hurt really bad, oh, darn right, I'm never going to do that again. But to that effect, like
Oh, sorry,
No, that's
Mark.
fine. Um, the problem with smarter than average is half the population isn't by definition. I will agree with you there. But how many times, Steve, for instance, how many times did your parents have to tell you don't put a screwdriver into the light socket or the wall outlet? Probably once, you know? And it's not the screwdriver's fault, and it's not the light socket's fault or the wall outlet or whatever you stick it into. So,
well, that's the thing. Like, I work with people, and it was never ever their fault, no matter what happened.
yeah,
Yeah.
Come on,
there should be a cover on that. No, you
Oh,
should not stick a screwdriver in that. That's what
mhm.
it is.
You know what's screwed up though? Going back to what you said about parents and something to the effect of we learned from our parents. I think we were talking about that earlier. I brought from the canal a bucket full of fish, and they were big fish. And my dad comes out and he looks and he says, "Well, those fish. What are you doing? Oh, I caught these." And he's like, "Yeah, but you do know that you're not going to keep them, right? You're going to put them back or something, right?" Well, no, I'm going to keep them. They're my new fish. And he says, "Well, they're not going to survive in that bucket." And so he gave me the information. He walked away. And I said, "Oh, I'm keeping them. I think that they are going to survive." And
Mhm.
slowly they started floating until I had just a couple. And so I took the bucket back and dumped it back. But so we test and stuff, and
Sure,
there's things like
sure.
that. Yeah.
And
but
Steve answered
but
my
we learn.
question. He said they didn't. I learned it the hard way and went on to be an electrician. Yeah, but how many times did you purposely do that? Once, and you learned.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
what I'm getting now.
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
but we
Yeah.
think we have to wrap people up in these bubbles
Mhm.
to protect them from any form of injury whatsoever. And in the process, we're teaching people to rely on technology to protect them from themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Cars today, like when I learned to drive, They were standard transmission, bias ply tires.
Mhm.
Power brakes were a rarity. Hardly ever power steering. Um, that kind of thing. Now they got accident or whatever you call that
Crazy.
detection.
Airbags.
Well, no, yeah, but the proximity, it'll
Yeah.
hit the brakes for you.
Yeah.
Airbags, and they're it's like you're putting on a suit of armor, and
Yeah.
oh, it's going to do everything for me. So I can drive however I want.
Exactly.
Like I knew where the limits of traction were going around a corner in the wintertime with bias ply tires on.
Mhm.
And you kept it below that, or else it cost you money to get yourself towed out of the ditch.
Right.
Dude, there's a huge difference between those automobiles back then, um, heavy to the max duty, and the stuff that we have now. And even then, if you look at pictures or news articles, you see them wrapped around frickin' and cars with that kind of like
Mhm.
shell, like heavy duty. And to compared to today, I mean, it's a miracle. It's insanity, dude. When
But
people did crash.
people drove on average more carefully back then because
Mhm.
you knew it. That's what Greg's talking about, the limits of bias ply tires. You couldn't
Hmm.
take that corner at 60 miles an hour because you wouldn't make the corner. You knew that. So you slowed down for it. Now people get pissed off at the corner when they're in a ditch. It's not the corner's fault.
Mhm.
You know,
Exactly.
we have wrapped people up in this cocoon of safety because it's like you said, Greg, we've got 3-point seat belts with shoulder harness. We got airbags all around us. There's crumple zones. We have radial tires real wide with traction. We have anti-lock brakes with traction control and all this other stuff so that you can do 65 around that corner.
Yeah, five
So
feet behind the guy ahead of you.
exactly. So now people think they are safe in these things and they drive like idiots because
Yeah.
they can get away with it because the cars are
Exactly
more
the same as
forgiving.
the saw stop. They get
For a
complacent.
while. For a
Yeah,
while,
and people
until
get
they
complacent.
break the traction limits or this limit
Right.
or that limit. Yeah.
And then they sue because the car is unsafe. Not you're
Hmm.
driving like an idiot, the car is unsafe.
Hmm.
This is the discussion that brought up this whole thing between Linda and I about safety because I remember we were talking about cars specifically. It was a Subaru commercial talking about safety, the number one asset of owning a Subaru. And I remember driving from California to Oregon, 400 miles, and then 400 miles home, riding on the back rear shelf package tray of a 1964 Dodge Dart that didn't have seatbelts in it at all. And now you're talking about this car is, safety is the number one. Oh, please. Come on.
I brought my son home in a basket from the
Hmm.
hospital. And the
Hmm.
wife, like it was a whatever a bassinet or something they called it, and it
Yeah.
would just yeah it would just and it was sitting on the floor of the van,
Hmm.
you know, in between the front seats. That's
Yeah.
it. That was a safety.
Yeah.
Now I would be liable and I could be fined for doing
Oh,
No,
anything
dude, you would
near
be
that.
pulled out of. You'd be pulled out and shackled on the side of the
handcuffed,
Oh
road,
yes, yep, yep,
batons.
wrestled to the ground, all on body cam.
yep.
The back seat was a jungle gym to us. We were up on the laying back on the rear shelf. We were down. I think you call them a parcel shelf, Jamie. We were laying down across
Yeah,
the
yeah.
seat, one of us in each footwell in the back seat. I mean, we were all over that place. Sometimes all at the same time.
Hmm.
And
We did.
my mom turning around, you kids, stop it! You kids, turning around as she stop it! You kids, stop!
Hey, hey, dude, back in the day, we at least here we did not wear seatbelts, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they were there, no
They were.
matter nobody freaking wore. And I remember that very clearly until they started pushing the laws like
Mm-hmm.
extreme. But there was a long time where seat belts, the option was just hanging there.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody that I knew were you. I never remember my dad clicking, it or son, put on your seatbelt. None of that. We'd all
I
jump in the car and go.
I started wearing seatbelts when we got transferred over to Germany because it was the law there, and they would pull you over for it. because they're strict about that.
Mhm. They are
So-
here still.
And we got over there in 1988. I never wore a seatbelt before that.
Okay.
Some cars I had them, some cars that didn't.
I
I
can't
had a
remember.
few cars where the two front seats had seatbelts, but the back seats didn't. So,
Well, seatbelts were optional
mhm.
until 1968 up here. And then all cars sold 68 and later had to have seatbelts.
I
And
think we were later than that. I think we were in the early 70s, but yeah.
anyway, but the use of them wasn't mandated until I don't know when. Can't remember the date.
I
Well,
used
by
to. I
by
used
the
to love-
time we got back from Germany in like 93, early 93, they had been mandated here in the States slowly, state by state.
Yeah, we didn't, but eventually it did. I don't remember the timeline, but I was gonna say that those old cars. I remember I used to love as a kid grabbing the front ornament or whatnot, the car
The hood ornament, yeah.
and grabbing it and pulling it, because it had this like band on it that was like
A spring.
and you could pull on it. It was like like some sort of strong rubber in
Mhm.
some cases, or the ones that and you could mess around with that stuff like that. You remember useless, right?
Pull
But-
it back and twang.
Yeah.
And it-
That was for pedestrians.
Yeah.
When,
But
when you ran them over in the crosswalk,
See,
they
you call them
wouldn't rip them
pedestrians.
yeah, well,
You call them
spandex
pedestrians.
speed,
I
spandex speed bumps.
called them targets of opportunity.
Yeah,
So,
speed bumps.
spandex speed bumps.
spandex speed bumps. Well,
You know the ones on bicycles.
yeah.
Oh, they're annoying. Oh,
There was this
annoying.
terrible I mean, not to but just a little snippet of it. There was this terrible court case that happened just recently about a guy that ran across the parade
Yes.
full of people, and a lot of people lost their lives. And he decided to the guy had a rap sheet that just rolled out like
Mhm.
a parchment in some sort of cathedral, and he decided to represent himself.
Yeah.
And he on his own, and he's like kind of in the sort of like hood speak and whatnot.
Mhm.
And he did everything he can. He said, well, that model of car, like the guy went through everything, but it was so horrible that he did himself, because he fired his it was just a whole nightmare scenario. It popped into my head. So
The male part of the seatbelt made for a great opener for your beer bottles back then. Yeah.
Yep.
It did. It did. And if you had the type of car that when you closed the car door, it had the claw and that latched onto the little loop, that little loop could be used as a bottle opener as well.
You
So-
talk about the seatbelt, and back in high school, a friend of mine had a car, and it looked like a police car. It was the lowest level Plymouth, 1970 or so, black, and it looked like an unmarked black police car. So he put his Commodore hat on,
Uh-huh.
and he talked to his seatbelt.
Pick it up and talk.
And all these guys would be doing burnouts in front of the school would see him coming and talk. Oh, they
Slow down
drive-
and
slow
slowly
down, big
drive
dog.
away.
it was hilarious.
Not impersonating an officer. I'm having an affair
Nope.
with my seatbelt. Midnight Scroller, Miss Shea, says she misses her first car. Okay, there we go. Let's go around the room. Your first car, Eloy, what was it?
my first car was going to be my grandfather's Pontiac Le Mans, and it didn't turn out that way because it was sitting until I was able to, and it didn't meet, it didn't coincide, so they sold it off, and I ended up purchasing it was actually a gift from my grandparents, and I was like 16 or 17, 16 probably. I got a Mustang,
Oh, wow.
1980s Mustang
Mm-hmm.
with T-tops,
Mm.
red, and that was a big deal.
Yeah, it was a big deal, even to me.
Yeah,
Wow.
and-
Well,
and then I got a job, in order to. But my father installed because alarms were coming in,
Mhm.
but my father bought the Econo alarm, and every time I pressed the button, instead of the cool beep beep or whatever at the time, it was more like a Nintendo game. Ding, dong, and so and so everywhere I went was an embarrassment to turn on the alarm, dude. But my father said, no, this is practical, it's economical, and it does the job. You're good. And I'm like, but Dad, I've got this cool situation. Well, yeah. So that was my first car.
How about you, Greg?
My first car was a 1948 Ford Super Deluxe 8 four-door sedan. I
48
still got
Ford.
it.
You still have it.
I still have it.
Wow.
It doesn't run, but I still got it. It's all there.
That's
That's
okay. I don't
awesome.
run either, so.
Yep.
That's freaking
Man.
awesome, Greg, that you have that.
Yeah.
Boy,
Well, it was kind of the thing, like, oh, well, if I sell it, I only get so many dollars. But if I fix it up, then I could, it'd be kind of neat. It was an old car, really, when I got it, because
Mhm.
I got it when I was 15. And what it was is an estate auction they had out in the country. My parents are out visiting my aunt and uncle, and I was working on the farm. So
Mhm.
I had to, go out in the tractor and work. And mom and dad were there, and they were going to go to this auction. And the sale bill for the auction said 1948 Ford car, right? And I said, well, buy me that. Just kind of wishful thinking more than anything, right? And then so I come back in from the field in the end of the day and go to put the tractor away in the machine shed. What's sitting there? This 1948 Ford car. And
wow,
Wow.
Greg.
so
I,
I did pay for it eventually, but
Mhm.
they bought it. They financed it.
I just want to. I know that we're going around the thing, but I just wanted to interject with that what you said, and kind of like just right, the amount of love that our parents, our families, it's evident from just things like that. I mean, because it
Yeah,
wasn't a simple.
that's very cool.
Yeah, yeah.
And you were just joking,
Well,
kind of half
joking,
joking,
half joking,
but you never expected it would really happen.
I'd love any car, right? Like just
Mhm.
you're 15 and you
Yeah,
anything, anything with a motor I wanted, right? So,
Yeah.
and like I say, it was an old car then because this would be 1970, 71, no 70, I guess.
Mhm.
Yeah. Anyway, this summer of 1970, I think, because I
So
didn't
it
even have
was,
my
yeah,
license yet, but so like that's quite an old car,
yeah, it
really.
was 20 something years old already. But
Yeah, and they weren't around. Very few were still driving in original shape, and that kind of stuff,
Mhm.
and being used. They
Yeah.
were, yeah, the collector guys. They would have the fancy, like with the redone ones, but
Mhm.
so
And they were into the two doors. You couldn't have given away a four-door back then.
right, yeah.
They
So
all
yeah,
wanted two doors.
yeah.
So, how about you, Jamie?
So I don't actually drive, but I do know the first vehicle I was ever in,
Hmm.
and there's a bit of story behind that. So I was born, and my dad decided he was going to go AWOL with the army,
Uh-oh.
and he decided to steal an AEC wrecker, which is a recovery vehicle,
Oh,
which kind of looks like that.
No.
oh goodness.
that's
So that
hilarious.
that was one of the first vehicle. That was the first vehicle I was ever in, and that's what he picked me up in the hospital in.
Oh, geez. When you were born.
Yeah, and here's the funny thing is when the military police come to my nan's to arrest him, right? They
Mhm.
didn't know their way back, so they made my dad drive them back to the
He could have taken them in any
base.
direction.
But he also made my nan make them dinner before they left.
You're an honorary that you're an honorary American because that sounds like any
That's
movie.
you know what? If you were to put Florida Man in front of that,
Yeah,
the world would believe it. The world would know it's true.
yeah. That's exactly
My
it.
do you know what? My dad's got some funny stories. I'll have to introduce you to him one day. So I'll tell you one of them. My dad had a little bit of a problem with alcohol in the army, and he used to have a little dumpy bottle of beer to stop himself from shaking.
Mhm.
And so he got taken to the sent to the hospital to have his stomach pumped and all this kind of stuff. He come back to camp and he went to see his CO and all that sort of stuff and said, "Right, you've done corporal page and all this stuff." He goes, "Yes, sir. Won't ever do that again." Blah 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 blah. He gets back to camp and he gets back to camp on his birthday.
Oh,
Well, the
geez.
second he gets back to camp, they've got a welcome home party for him. He gets drunk all over again and has to go back to get his stomach pumped.
Oh,
Oh
jeez.
wow.
Yeah,
Man,
but he's got a lot of funny stories, as most military people probably have.
my first car was I owned it for a grand total of 6 hours. It was a 1961 Plymouth Valiant.
Yeah.
I bought it from an old guy for $10 and
Wow.
sold it to a wrecking yard for 25, and
Wow.
then went and I felt guilty. I went and I split the $15 profit with him
Oh, that's good. That's kind of you.
because I felt guilty.
So you made no money? Well, you
We
You
both
made
made
Made $7.50.
we both made $7.50 off of it.
that's
He's
good.
a
That's a
well,
good nature.
hell, I should have just sold it to the wrecking yard myself. I said, yeah, what it was, my dad got mad that I bought it.
Mhm.
You're selling it. You're selling it. You call up a wrecking yard and get them that thing out of our driveway. So
So
it ran. It was a little 6-cylinder. It ran.
So what
I-
car did you pass your test in?
I passed my test in my mom's Dodge Monaco station wagon. And this thing was a land yacht. I measured it one day. It was 21 feet long and probably 7 feet wide. And it was one of those things where you almost needed an intercom to talk to the people in the back seat. It would sit 9 people easily. 3 seats up front, 3 in the back, and behind in the cargo, it had a pull-up hatch. You get 3 kids back there. And I took my driver's test in that. But my first real car that I drove was a 1971 Dodge Colt that my parents bought brand new. And they didn't give it to me, but they basically said, okay, if you make the last 2 payments on this car, they owed 2 more payments on it. They said, if you make the last 2 payments on this car, we'll sign the title over to you. And so right then, real quick, I got a job and I made those last 2 payments. They signed the title over for me and I had a car in my name. But
Nice.
my dad was all about teaching lessons. So if you're going to have a car, we will add you to our insurance. You're going to pay me the difference, but we'll add you to our insurance and we'll set it up to where you can drive, but you are going to pay for it.
I gotta say, just just for the sake of leaving it recorded, I remember that going back to the car, it was such a great thing, the Mustang and such a beautiful car. I think that
I'll be right back.
I can't see it perfectly, but I think that the reason they felt encouraged and did purchase it for me to a degree other than love of their grandson is that I had been working since the age of 15 at McDonald's part-time after school and whatnot. And I had been doing that for like a year or whatnot. And they must have thought, I'm thinking right now what they would have thought. They must have thought, well, look at the responsibility. Because none of my friends were working, but I was. I mean, It was quite the leap for a kid with such entertainment out there available to decide to sit in one spot and actually work at the McDonald's. And they probably felt, well, look what he's doing. Nobody's asking him for it. And so they did that. And obviously I crashed it a billion times. I mean, by the end of the story, it was a nightmare. And so I could imagine how they thought about that too. But the long story short is I think the sense of our family, the love and the leap, what is it? The leg up, so to speak. It's an incredible thing.
And well, that was part of it. I had gotten a job like 2 weeks before that. I was a busboy at a restaurant. And the situation, I didn't have a car. I had my driver's license, but I didn't have a car. I would borrow my parents' car, one or the other. And the little Dodge Colt, they were going to trade it in on a new car. They decided not to do that because I was using that car. I worked in the evenings on swing shift. I'd go to work at 4 o'clock and I would get off at 10 and come home. It's just a part-time job. But I was taking that car to work anyway. So they decided, well, you're working, you've got a job, you're getting your paycheck coming in every week. If you will make the payments on that, the last 2 monthly payments on that, we'll sign it over to you and we won't trade it in to buy a new car.
That's an amazing, yeah.
And so they went ahead and they did.
But there was an expectation
Right.
that you appreciated it and you didn't mess up by,
Right.
driving ridiculously and
Mhm.
getting speeding tickets or crashing or whatever.
Guilty.
Well, and this was another part of it in that my father drove it home to me in that if you carry a B average in school or higher, the insurance is a lower rate because you're showing your responsibility.
Mhm.
I'm a teenage boy, so the insurance rates are high anyway because I'm a teenage boy because they figure teenagers are going to go out and wreck a car. But if you carried a B average or above, your rates were a little bit lower because you were maybe seen as one of these little bit more responsible people. Little did they know. So it basically forced me to get better grades and keep better grades in school. So I had to pay them less for my insurance.
Whenever I got a bad report card,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not like they knew exactly when it was coming out or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
I would just frickin' stow it to somewhere, and or once I even trashed it, and I did get busted. So yeah, I was pretty rebellious in certain ways.
I went to California schools. My parents had to sign ours, and we had to take it back the next day.
I
couldn't have pulled a B average if I stole it.
I carried a B average, no problem. I mean, it's just I had to actually do the work. I couldn't, I couldn't half step anymore. I had to actually do the work, but I always got fairly good grades.
The
I
only
was never a
the only
straight A
B's
student.
I used to get A's was in auto shop.
And see how that matches perfectly with your. Hey, I was thinking this episode should be called either one of two things, Bear Lake, or
Creek.
Oh, Creek,
Bear Creek.
Bear Creek, or guys really love pink.
Pretty in pink.
Pretty in pink. There you go.
Yeah. There's various layers to
Pretty in pink, like the movie. Okay, let's see here. Jim Dockrell says his first car was a '68 Plymouth Sport Fury, piece of junk. Yeah, but bet you wish you had it now.
I don't know if they ever had them in this. I don't think they had them. My dad used to have a Ford Sierra Cosworth.
Mm-hmm.
And he used to have four spotlights on the front of the grill.
Like a rally car, yeah.
Yeah. Red one, bright red one it was.
They sold those over here for a little while. They weren't very popular here.
I will say something about go ahead.
Linda says her first car was a '76 Ford Fiesta she won in a supermarket giveaway. Didn't know how to drive, sold it. Then in '87, she bought a '65 Buick from one of her officers in the Army, and that was the car she learned to drive in. Yes, she learned to drive when she was in her 30s. I taught her how to drive a manual transmission.
My dad learned to drive what I think you call a Woody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's something about the Europeans with Jamie here in mind that I'll mention and see what Jamie thinks, or everybody actually. But so in America we have the cars. Traditionally, maybe even today, these huge cars, which we don't necessarily look at as huge, but compared to Europe, there's a lot of these smaller models. Well, I was talking with my cousins over there, and we were sharing pictures, and they and my cousin showed guy cousin showed a picture of his car, like from back in the day, and I looked at it and said, "Oh, how adorable!" Like I, because it looked so tiny. It looked kind of like when you see like at the circus and clowns come out, and like I said, "Oh, that look at that, that's hilarious!" Like and he was like, "Oh, get out of here! What are you talking about?" So he was offended because I saw it. Because I saw it as such a little, like it's a little thing, a button of a car. Because we are used to these savage monster,
But
you know.
Yeah.
that's because we have space and big roads.
Yeah.
They
Your
don't.
car just wouldn't
and
facilitate our
long
road.
distances to travel.
Yeah. We have big cars, wide roads, and space between buildings. And in Europe, they
going a
just
couple of
don't.
100 miles on a motorized roller skate is just not that comfortable.
Well, I'll put it to you this way. It was 28 miles from our driveway to my parking spot at work. For Linda, it was 55 miles. And that's
Mhm.
one way. So, doing that in an itty bitty compact, yes. I did it in a Geo Metro for about 6 months. And I felt like I was being drug across the ground in a bucket,
Yeah.
And
I had a few small cars. Like I had, well, I guess they were all like British GM made things. They were one was a Vauxhall, a
mhm,
59
Yeah.
Vauxhall, and then I had a 62 Envoy or Envoy, however you want to, and that's made by the same. One was sold by the Pontiac dealers, and one was sold by the
yeah.
GM, their Chevy dealer.
Mhm,
And then I had a 60, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 Envoy Epic, a little
mhm.
square box, and I'm driving that thing along, going down the highway, and it's a 4-lane highway. A Chevette passes me, and I go, "Oh, that's a big car."
Yeah. Yeah.
In Cuba, you either see 1950s classic American cars or Russian little tiny Soviet
Yeah.
cars.
Fiats and Ladas and
And
what
the
have you.
classic American cars have Russian marine diesel motors running
Yeah.
them,
Yeah.
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. Shay had a
Pretty-
1986 Chrysler Fifth Avenue, bright red velvet interior, paid $400 at a police auction. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Gotta wonder, was it a drug dealer's car or something?
Yeah, I picture like one of those big hats, like
Yeah. The big, yeah.
the big like well, let's not go there.
Jim Dockrell had first drove a 75 AMC Hornet. Was too young to drive the Fury when he had that. Said that one was junky too, but wouldn't die. The best, most durable car I owned, Jim, was a 1965 Rambler American station wagon, and I still regret selling that. But that thing would not die. It just wouldn't. It would go anywhere, do anything I ever wanted. It was just old reliable. So
I tell you, have you ever seen the UK version of Top Gear with Jeremy Clarkson and all
I
that
used
kind
to
of stuff?
live for that show. That
Yeah.
was my
Did
favorite.
you ever
TV
see
show.
the episode where they tried killing a Land Rover?
Yes. Well, no, they tried to kill a Toyota Hilux pickup. I saw
Oh,
that.
that's
one.
that. Sorry, yes, a Toyota Hilux.
Oh, that thing is legendary.
Oh my good lord!
They set
They
it
put
on
it on top.
fire.
Yeah, they drowned it. They put it on
Yep.
top of a building and then blew the building up, and it
Yeah.
still ran afterwards.
And not a two-story building. We're talking a high rise, an old high rise apartment building, like 15, 16 floors. They put it on the roof of this sucker with a helicopter and then blew up the building, and it came down with the building, and they drove it away. They tied it down to a boat ramp and let the tide come in. And the tide was so violent, it broke 3 of the ropes. They had to go find it. Pulled it out,
Yeah,
Do you guys
started it up,
remember,
and drove it away.
Did you see
Mark?
the?
Do you remember? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Greg.
Did you see the? I think it was them. They took an old Honda Cub, and they
Mhm.
tried to kill that.
I don't know.
Maybe it wasn't them, but
It must
it
have
was
been
the same
somebody else.
idea as the Hilux. Try to to kill. They dropped it off a building. They put vegetable oil in for
Mhm.
instead of regular crankcase oil. They
Mhm.
did this. They put I don't know how many boxes of pizzas on the
Mhm.
back of it, like 550 or
Mhm.
stacked high, and had to drive it. They dropped it off a building. And
Mhm.
the wheels were like eggs, and they're driving this thing.
They put this pickup through four kinds of hell, and
Mhm.
even went so far as to fill it up with gasoline and threw a lit rag into it and walked away from it.
Yeah.
The thing about the challenge was they were not allowed to replace any parts. They could like flush out any fluids and put fuel in it, but because like when they tied it down to that boat ramp, they made him take because of environmental concerns, they made him take all the fuel out and all the oil out of it. So but when they finally got it, flipped it back over and got all the water out of it, they put oil and diesel back into it. It was a diesel engine, and it started right up, and they drove it away. They
Do you
couldn't kill the damn thing.
They
do you
dropped
guys
like a cannonball thing on top on the roof of it as well.
Yes, they dropped a wrecking. They hit it beat it up with a wrecking ball. Yeah.
do you guys remember a few years ago? It could be anywhere from 10 to 20 years ago actually, or 15, where here in the States they came out with this throwback classic. I think it was a Chevrolet. I forget the specifics, but it looked like something that 007 would have drove. Do you guys remember that? It was a very classic look. It was an American car, but it kind of had that very sort of Aston
Hmm.
Martin, maybe not Aston Martin. It was a classic. It was a Chevy something.
Wow. Nothing is coming to mind other than the
I
Impala.
thought like a Jaguar or something like that.
It
Yeah.
wasn't a Jaguar, but it was the first car that I saw come out that changed drastically its shape back to something that was decent from back in the day, and it stood out to me. It was
Was
I
it
can't say.
the newer Monte Carlo? Maybe. I don't know. We'd have to sit there and go through a
Yeah,
bunch of
Now I
pictures and
know
check
that
it out.
the Chrysler brought out the PT Cruiser, which was a
Yeah.
retro styled,
Yeah.
whatever, and then GM snagged him, the designer of it, and they come out with the HHR,
HHR. Yeah.
and then they also come out with the
SSR.
SSR,
Yeah.
which was a pickup truck
Yeah.
that was styled back to like the early '50s pickup
yeah.
trucks.
They did that one wrong to me.
Yeah.
That cover that they had over the bed, if they would have made a retro style pickup, I think it would have sold.
Mhm.
I
I
wish I
think
could remember the one that I'm trying to. I thought that you guys would have
mm,
brought it up
as
easily, but
a regular car, though I can't recall.
And then Plymouth had the Prowler,
Prowler, yes.
that
it's none of
purple
those.
roadster looking jobby.
Yeah.
And they were all purple. All of them were
Mm,
purple.
mm.
No, this was a red. It had it was a red car, and it was out in the market, and it was very freaking nice. It had more of a boxy shape, something back calling back to the '60s and such
I don't
'70s.
know. I don't
It
know.
was fucking. It was oops. It was great.
Let's see. They call the Hilux a Tacoma in America. Yeah, but that's pretty recent. We got screwed out of a good name. Well,
The
I don't know. They can
tacos didn't
still
come
call it.
until about 1989 or 90.
Yeah, down here they didn't start calling it the Tacoma until the 90s.
Yeah.
Late 90s, maybe.
SR5 was before that.
Yes, and they did call them the Hilux, but nobody ever called it a Toyota Hilux. They always called it a Toyota pickup or a Toyota truck. But the Hilux, my dad had one from, I think it was a 71 or 72, something like that, little white one, and it was right across the tailgate, Hilux.
They
But
dropped the
nobody ever
Hilux
called it.
name up here anyway in the early '70s, and then they were just Toyota pickups or
Mhm.
the SR5 was
Yeah.
a trim level or it
Yes.
was a 5-speed is what it was. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
two of them out in my backyard.
Yeah.
They're my sons.
The SR5 was a trim package because that was available on pickups, and I remember it being on Corollas, and
Mhm.
a few of the models. It's kind of like how the Toyota Celica had the ST model and had the GT model.
Mhm.
And it was just a different trim package. But what guys talking about cars, and we've been on for an hour and 40, going on an hour and 45, and I can do this until the end of time. But so we
I'm
might
waiting for Eli to tell us about his pink hybrid.
Yeah. he's gonna get an electric smart car,
His,
and he's
Yeah.
gonna
pink
paint
outfit for his GI Joe.
pink, and he's gonna have strawberry shortcake in the back window.
Yeah. I bet the car's going to have eyelashes as well.
And a Hello Kitty seat covers.
and pink pom poms on the front
On the dice.
Yeah. Pink fuzzy dice.
And beads on
And-
the driver's seat.
I'll take no.
That was-
No is
I
not
remember
not
that. A
an
lot of
answer.
taxi drivers used to have that, or Uber drivers.
Yeah.
Beads
I wonder if I
on
could
the
pull that
seats.
Now, do you guys ever remember the little balls all the way around the outside of the headliner?
Oh my God! Half of my neighborhood was lowriders.
Mhm.
It was like a law. You had to have that.
But that didn't
pom-poms.
come into this till the 60s or 70s.
Right.
Okay, it was in the 50s
Mhm.
that I remember it.
Well, you remember the
Well, 50s cars.
you had angel hair, they called it, or angel fur, real long fake fur on the
Mhm.
parcel shelf in the back window,
Mhm.
and the rabbit ear TV antenna
Yes, yes.
out the driver's side, the rear window behind the driver, the
Mhm.
rabbit ear TV antenna, and
I'm
chrome
trying
curb feelers, the dual curb feelers,
Mhm.
and wide white walls.
Yep. Spinner hubcaps.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And
This
so
is gonna
low
eat
to
me
the
alive,
what?
not knowing because
What
I
that
really
car was.
thought you guys would have, had that in a
Nope.
split second, but apparently not. I guess that this is a to be continued in my mind as for getting the answer to it. I'm looking at cars right now to try to see if I can.
My dad wanted a Celica Supra, and just he couldn't convince my mom that it was worth the extra money.
My father-in-law had one.
Yep.
One of the first ones, first iterations of them.
Linda says, "Man, you guys are talking about cars I went to school with." Well, I was gonna ask everybody when I asked about what car was your first car you owned. I was gonna ask, but Greg still got his, so that question's out the window. Jamie has never had a car, so that question's out the window to him. So, Eloy, do you wish you still had that Mustang?
Oh, dude, so much. It's so much that would. Yes, so much. It was so perfect for the era.
Yeah.
It
But
was.
what about
so
today?
perfect.
Do you think it would still be
Is that
good
it,
for you
Eloy?
today?
It is not it. It looked more. The
Yours
car
year
had
was
been-
77, you say?
What
Eloy?
year was your Mustang, Eloy?
I don't know now.
It was in 80s or 70s?
It was an 80s.
Okay,
It was
so
boxy. It was a boxy.
So
shape.
that was a Fox body.
Fox
It wasn't.
body.
It wasn't the Mustang 2.
I don't remember. I have a picture
Because
of
the
it. I'll
Mustang
look for it.
2 went from 74 to 78,
Okay.
and then it was 79 was the first Fox body.
Well, we can do this in a hangout.
Yep.
Actually, before we.
You
Well,
just
no,
got a Jim just started a fight. No, I don't wish I had the Fury. Well, but never buy another Mopar again.
Mopar or no car.
Mm-hmm. Mopar to you.
Let me see if I can find it. A picture of it so you can see.
But yeah, I've always been a Chrysler fan. I've always been a Chrysler fan. And a 69 Sport Fury, that would have been a cool car. Yeah,
See-
that would have been a cool car.
No, I thought that my friend would have it saved on our messenger thing, but it's not freaking there. All right,
Okay.
doesn't matter.
We'll look it up. All right, we need to go ahead and land the plane. We've been on almost 2 hours.
All right. Well, listen, we want to thank our guests on live with us. We want to thank all of you guys out there in the chat. This is the Trampled Underfoot podcast show. We go live every Tuesday at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific Coast time here on our YouTube channel, Trampled Underfoot Podcast on YouTube. We have a website by the same name, trampledunderfootpodcast.com. Catch our past episodes audio-wise over there by pressing the Wayback Machine button, and you can download those to your podcatcher. And we have a site over on Facebook where you could drop us show ideas, and we're also sponsored by
Harneo Media, your web source, your web solution. If you're thinking about creating a web presence or improving your web presence, there's no better way to do that than with a website. You can talk to the folks over at Harneo Media. And when I say folks, I mean Steve. He will take care of you. He is the man. You're not dealing with some nameless, faceless person in some call center somewhere. You're dealing with Steve. That's Harneo Media, HARNEAL media.com, sponsor of trampledunderfootpodcast.com.
All right. Well, oh, and by the way, our opinions are not our opinions. The opinions of the guests, the opinions of the audience, the opinions of people slightly or distantly associated with us are not necessary, or actually are not at all associated with the opinions of our sponsors.
That's as clear as mud.
In order, we want to liberate, we want to unshackle the chains and liberate everyone from any nothing.
You might know who I was referring to at the beginning of the thing by the long-winded one.
Yeah.
Oh, you want long wind? See, now that's a dangerous thing to ask for, especially in close quarters. So nothing. Enjoy yourselves. Have a great week. Be safe, and we shall see you next time here in the Trampled Underfoot podcast show. See ya.
Peace. Have a good one.
Have a good one.